Turtles all the way down. I'm Jake, sometimes Jenk. This is going to be a slightly different approach to a podcast episode here. I'm going to kind of do a little bit of a primer, and I guess it's directed at a certain group of people that I'm trying to understand, and maybe I have something in common with. At least I did when I was younger. I'm talking about the alt-right, the so-called alt-right, and especially this saying that seems to be pretty popular amongst them, which is this notion of a cucktard, and it's kind of an insult, and they will often hurl it at someone called a liberal cucktard. So I just want to maybe explain to my alt-right friends what a liberal cucktard is thinking. But before we get into the details of that, just want to kind of call back to my youth. And when I was a kid, there was a couple of sci-fi universes that were quite popular. And there seemed to be a bit of a cleave there as well. I mean, it seemed like, when I was a kid, a little bit earlier on, this show started in the late 60s and the early 70s. It was Star Trek. That was the sci-fi universe. And then a little bit later on in the 70s, another sci-fi universe became very popular, and that was the Star Wars universe. And I got to say that they're kind of, if you watch if you look at these two universes, they seem to have a very different, I guess, worldview or approach to how the universe is constructed and, the battles that go on within it. In the Star Trek universe, it seems like there is almost always a battle of smarts. And the reason that the humans seem to win most often is that they're quite smart. In Star Wars universe, there's a battle of forces. It's about power. It's about control. You've got nasty forces and you've got good forces. It's kind of like a battle between good and evil. It's non-rational. It's almost religious, and it's not surprising that a lot of people will describe the Star Wars universe as kind of a religious way of looking at the world. So in the Star Wars universe, you've got this good and evil battle going on, and I guess the hero of that, Han Solo, is he is what he is. He's got a lot of gumption, he's got a lot of drive, he's got a lot of moxie. He's smart enough, he's nice enough, but he doesn't seem to be exceptional in a lot of ways. The universe is between good and evil. It's a battle between the two. And you got Darth Vader, you got Princess Leia, you got all this going on. In the Star Trek universe, and I got to say, the Star Wars universe seems a little simplistic to me. There's one or the other. In the Star Trek universe, you've kind of got that element, but something more going on. So the way I see it is that, and it's embodied in the characters. So you've got the character of Spock. He seems very clearly to be of the intellect, the logical mind, structure, rationality. And then you've got another character, Dr. McCoy. He is literally focused on the body. He's a doctor. He heals the body. He's all about the body and the human emotions, and he's always kind of dissing Spock for lacking those things that he has, that Spock doesn't. What's interesting about Star Trek is that you got another character who happens to embody both of those in a great swirl, and that's Captain Kirk, Captain James Tiberius Kirk. And I got to say, he was probably one of the early models for my, understanding of what it is to be a man. There was my father, there was Captain Kirk, there was Muhammad Ali. People like that were my heroes growing up as a kid. And what's great about Kirk is that he's kind of like a mix of the two. You've got the, here he is giving suggestions to Spock or to Scotty about, taking something about quantum fluctuations and creating something else and, outsmarting some other super intelligent alien. He's able to do this. At the same time, he can kick ass. He has fights. He's kind of a macho dude. He's always betting all these green aliens. He kind of gets around. He's kind of the great mix of all of those forces of human nature. Now, back to these the alt-rights. This notion of a liberal cucktard is meant to be an insult, of course. But there's something interesting about that. I mean, it's offensive, obviously, to a lot of people. And, this is not a safe space right now. So we're going to talk and use some offensive words here. And that's okay. Within this context, we're working it out. Of course, tard, that's obviously referring to the intelligence of the person. They're calling them a retard. That's what they're saying. It's offensive, of course. But the word cuck is kind of interesting. I mean, it's cuckold. It's clearly within this, this worldview in which, I guess, well, first of all, I'll tell you what a cuckold is. It's kind of meant to describe somebody who has had their woman stolen from them, who had, a woman who had an affair on him. And so as a result, this man is cuckolded. He's kind of humiliated. He's lost out. He's a loser. This diss that you throw at someone when you say cuck, basically what they're saying is that, hey, they kind of see this worldview in which women are kind of property in a way. I mean, it's something that can be stolen from a man, which is kind of preposterous to begin with. But, it's not surprising. And, this is kind of a demographic thing as well, because I got to say, I don't have a lot of friends in this category of the alt-right, let's say, but I used to be a man in my 20s. And I got to say, I'm just guessing, more than likely, that if you're an alt-right, you're probably a dude. You're probably in your 20s. I mean, you could be a little bit younger. You're a little ahead of the curve. You could be a little bit older, a little behind the curve, or maybe you haven't quite, gone on. I used to be in my 20s. I got to say, I could have been probably easily taken in by this kind of an alt-right thinking. And the reason is because it kind of employs this notion of masculinity. And, when you're a young man and you're trying to find your way in the world and you're trying to, exert your adult situation of being a man in the world, you look at what's around you. And in the culture, especially when I was growing up, you had this notion of masculinity that still persists to a great degree. But what I think is happening is it might be on its way out. I mean, it clearly is, I think. At least some of these older notions of masculinity, these stereotypical notions that we had, it's probably on its way out. And maybe it's in its death throes. And when something is in its death throes, sometimes it lashes out really hard. And so I'm kind of looking at this as a cultural framework. And it seems to me that a lot of these guys that are kind of taken in by this alt-right way of seeing the world are really trying to exert their masculinity. I mean, almost always they're kind of seem to have a very retrograde and I got to say, an immature way of seeing the world and women in particular, and power. It's almost like mafia rules, and it's not surprising that you've got a lot of these authoritarian dictators or dictator wannabes who are essentially, and this is how I view a dictator. To be honest, I think a dictator is essentially a mob boss who has, gone through more or less criminal enterprises, deception, lying, cheating. Sometimes through business, sometimes through politics, sometimes through the military. And what happens with these guys? Like the Saddam Husseins of the world, the Vladimir Putins of the world, the Erdogan in Turkey, and Trump to a certain extent as well. These are kind of like, and I'm a little bit familiar with this organized crime type, mafia type rules. I mean, I grew up, my early days were in certain neighborhoods of Istanbul. And, my father hung around these guys, and he was one of these guys that, and in those days, business and the mob there was kind of a gray area, especially in situations where you have, let's say, cultural institutions that haven't been completely solidified and established in terms of the rule of law. Also, in economics of scarcity. I mean, when there is a scarcity of resources, when there's not enough to go around, when there's a chance that you might, not have enough to eat unless you're really, got a lot of toughness, and maybe you're actually okay with kind of stepping on people as well to get ahead. These are the kind of guys that work through the ranks and end up basically occasionally taking over, and they take over the entire society, and it functions very much like a mafia boss. You have people around him that are basically yes men kissing ass, saying everything that they're doing is great, and they're kind of like minions. Let's face it. They're not the alphas. They're kind of like, and this is kind of another dynamic that the alt-right likes to talk about. It seems it's kind of like this alpha-beta type of splitting people into categories, and which is fine. I mean, this is a way to sometimes, see the world, put a a metaphor, some kind of an analogy on top of it that makes it easier for us to understand. It's not necessarily something that is a one-to-one, accurate representation of the world, but the metaphors and analogies are useful. So they talk about alphas and betas, for example. So it seems to me that if you're supporting one of these dictator-type, authoritarian types, almost certainly you're a beta. But these guys go on and on about how they're the tough guys because they're taking the side of the macho dude who's going on and dissing others and stepping on them, and they think this is something that's admirable. But they're really, come on, someone who actually with a little bit of years and wisdom in their belt, they look at that and they think, oh, this dude's weak. This dude's super weak. I mean, he's trying to kind of have this power and masculinity of this tough guy, this strong man. They're hoping that it rubs off on them. They're hoping that they can kind of kiss ass to this guy and maybe trickle down some of their power. Maybe get some women. Because I mean, here's another part of it. It's like a lot of these guys. Kind of stooping to this level, but this is the language that this microcosm seems to talk in. So these are dudes that are going on and on about how tough they are, how alpha they are, how they're into this masculinity, and they decry all these pussies around the world that are making everybody soft and our culture soft, and America needs to be great again and tough again. But clearly these guys are not getting laid a lot. Let's just put it out there. Anybody who keeps going on and on about how tough they are and about putting down anybody who they consider to be pussies is clearly not that tough and is clearly very insecure. And you look at a lot of these guys, and Trump is a prime example of it. My God, the guy goes on and on about so many things that so petty and ridiculous and superficial. Clearly, he has a huge insecurity. He's not the guy that you think he might be, and you're kind of being taken in by this con man, this kind of a deceptive, sociopathic, mafia type guy who has no problem stepping on people to get where they want to go. Now, it's kind of like a Darwinism, that they're buying into. Also, kind of like a gaming culture. I mean, it seems like. These guys are kind of seeing everything as kind of a game, and they're playing this game, and they're seeing people winning, and they're seeing how they're winning, and they're saying, well, this guy's winning by doing this. Let me imitate him. And I got to say that a lot of those guys that you're imitating are assholes. They're assholes. And I'll define an asshole maybe in a little bit. Now, this economics of scarcity causes people to do a lot of shit. I mean, and also, demographically speaking, any culture that you have a large cohort demographically of men in their 20s, especially men in their 20s who aren't doing a lot, who aren't maybe getting jobs, who don't have economic prospects, who see a future of economic scarcity, you are basically inside a cauldron recipe of disaster. You see this all around the world. Wherever you have, look at the Middle East. The demographic median age, there is in the early 20s. You've got a lot of, or maybe even in the late teens in some cultures. And wherever you see that, you see a lot of violence. You see a lot of competition. You see a lot of jockeying. You see a lot of demeaning. You see a lot of stepping on people. You see a lot of murder. Shit happens in those cultures. But now we look at, let's say, America, Canada, Western Europe. These places don't really have an economic scarcity. They haven't. I mean, they've had a lot of plenty. There's been a lot of bounty. There's been prosperity. People have been able to, have most of their needs met. And so you ask yourself, well, why are we seeing this now? Well, what I think is happening, and this is, again, maybe just a part of the explanation, but there is, on the grand scheme of things, I think these Western societies have a lot of wealth, and the wealth does continue to grow. But what's happening is that for most of the people, they're not seeing this growth. They're actually seeing a diminishment. And, they talk about this middle American, white, middle-aged guy who is finding that their prospects are limited. Yeah, for them, there is an economics of scarcity. It's coming in. And as a result, it's kind of like triggering this cultural phenomenon that, we see this in large groups. We see this in species. We see this in certain systems that when you have a large system that is changing in very, grand ways. And in this sense, let's say most of the people are starting to experience an economic scarcity, then they're responding in ways that you're not surprised by. They're responding in ways of, clutching and grabbing and competing and fighting and violence, and all of these things start to happen, and it is starting to happen. And a lot of these people take great comfort in seeing someone who seems to claim that they know what they're doing completely and confidently, and they're taken in by confidence. This is what a confidence man is. It's a con man, like a Trump, is projecting all of this confidence. Hey, I know everything. I can solve these problems and change these things. Yeah, okay. You're a confidence man, and the suckers on the alt-right. Sorry, I called you that, but that's what you are. And, maybe I used to be one too in my 20s. You're kind of being conned by this display of power, this peacockery. He's spreading his gold lame head and furniture and towers, and you think, ooh, this guy's got power. Come on, man. Grow the fuck up. This guy's conning you, right? And even, think about what you're saying. Cuckolding. Cucktard. Well, if you can... imagine a world if you can start throwing out insults in which you're basically, going along the world view that women are something to be possessed and stolen from men. It's a very, very small step to think rape is okay, maybe. I mean, because what are you doing? You're kind of forcing people to do things against their wishes. You're oppressing them. And in this kind of what they call a Darwinian, masculine worldview, that shit is okay. I mean, it's not that shocking to them. And and whenever someone points it out to them, they're dissed. Oh, you're a pussy. You're a cucktard. Oh, why are you being so sensitive? Why do you care about hurt feelings? Oh, you big baby. These kind of insults are thrown out as if you are, sensitive and caring to others, that you must be weak, that you must be a pussy, that you're going to be beaten because you're a loser. And this is the kind of approach that take. And I gotta say, maybe in my 20s, I would have been susceptible to that. I was kind of, because, at that, especially if you're in your 20s and you're somewhat maybe smarter than average, and maybe you're, stronger than average, you think, oh my God, the world is my oyster. If everything seems easy, and you think, anybody who's complaining is just not working hard enough. They're not trying hard enough. They're not, they're losers. They're pussies. This worldview is kind of easy to take on when you're a young man. But I got to tell you, as you grow older, get wiser, have more experience, this will start to change. But hopefully you survive your 20s, and hopefully the world survives your 20s, because you look around the world and all of these crazy dudes that are going around shooting up people, these suicide bombers, most of them are in their 20s. Most of them are somewhat intelligent, to be honest. Most of them are, but they're lacking something, and I'm going to get to that. So what we're talking about is we're talking within frameworks. We're talking within metaphors. We're talking within an analogy, and that is helpful. So if you happen to look at the world within a global framework of, let's say, capital and money, you might have maybe your Marx, and you start to view the world in certain ways, and you impose a structure on the world, which you think is a good description of it, and it's useful. You learn a lot about things. You learn a lot about how things work. That's not to say that's a perfect representation of the world, or you could think of it in terms of patriarchy. And there's a lot of these people on the left that are looking at, maybe the feminists in particular, are looking at the world within a framework of patriarchy. And then that's very useful. And you see how things work and why people are behaving in certain ways. Again, I don't think that's the only way to look at it, but it's very useful. You might be looking at it in terms of, will to power. And so you think of, maybe you think of domination and alphas and betas or what have you. And you see the world that way. Again, sometimes useful. But it's always dangerous when somebody takes one of those worldviews and thinks that's the worldview, the one which explains everything. And that's when you get into idealism, and that's when you get into a lot of trouble, probably for yourself and for your culture. Now, there's other ways and frameworks to think about this as well. Sometimes I like to think about, culture and politics and the human species even kind of like a body or a system. And you can think of it, if you think of, all of us as kind of a body or a culture as a body, then you can talk in terms of the metaphors and analogies of like antibodies and, viruses and inoculations. And, so you can look at something like Trump, for example. The Trump phenomenon, I'll say, not so much him, but the growth of that. And you could say in terms of, I don't know, maybe I've even heard someone talk in terms of maybe not using these words, but, you could say something like, well, the system needed something like that. It needed to be a shakeup. It needed to be, something like that needed to be thrown in, like an inoculation. It's like we get a small taste of this authoritarian nightmare. And the thinking is, ooh, maybe this will actually, start the process of healing, and we'll be able to look at that and say, oh, let's move on from that. Let's get to the next stage. That's a little, optimistic. I hope that's the case. But on the other hand, it could also be, something that's a reflection of a disease within us, and maybe it's the beginning of the end. That's also possible within, the metaphor of the body and body systems. So, and also you see this in a lot of species where something happens, let's say something happens within the environment such that there is, I don't know, maybe a diminishment of resources. There happens to be an economic scarcity happening. And sometimes when that happens, there's kind of like a gene expression kicks in where en masse, I mean, this happens within the individual, but it happens to a lot of them all at once. And so as a result, you've got this cultural movement happening, and it's kind of like it's a loop. It's not like one is necessarily causing the other, kind of a direct cause and effect relation. There's kind of a loop going on back. It's kind of like a positive feedback loop. And what happens is, if I think of the human species as kind of like a body, instead of genes, you think of memes, these ideas that are spread. And when you have this system that we have right now, where you're seeing a lot of people that are experiencing an economics of scarcity, they're experiencing, this kind of a, threat in a way. And when a body system does that, it expresses certain genes sometimes. And in the case of the body politic, some memes are expressed. And the memes that are being expressed are these kind of masculine, Darwinian fight to the death kind of thing. And it's kind of interesting to see that in our popular culture. You're seeing a lot of these TV shows, like Game of Thrones or, Walking Dead, where it's kind of a fight to the death and power rules, and there's really not much room for kindness. And, it seems like if you're kind and caring and empathetic, you're kind of weak and you're going to get crushed, seems to be the message that we're seeing in a lot of our popular culture these days. And again, maybe that's not surprising given the kind of a meme expression that's coming out within this body politic, within this body system that we call our cultures, however you want to slice it. Now, you see this in kind of like a beehive. Occasionally you'll have a shift change depending on the environmental conditions where the beehive starts behaving in a certain different way all of a sudden. And, each of these individuals are behaving differently, but the system itself is demonstrating different kind of behaviors as a result of them. And that's in accordance with the environment as it's changing. And in our environment, when we see that a lot of these people are experiencing an economics of scarcity, they're individually having the shift, which is then changing the culture around us. And it's happening very quickly. This is the other thing. It's so much that there's, there is a complexity that is kind of hard to deny these days. And the complexity is, every generation thinks that what's happening is maybe moving, fast and is kind of complex for them. And that's true. But you can pretty much objectively see that a lot of this is happening a lot quicker. And if you just look at the technological advancement, which has a lot to do with how people experience this, world of complexity around them, it's changing much more rapidly than it ever used to. I mean, we have new technologies and as a result, new cultural practices that come into place. And within even, a few years, it's already been displaced by something else. So people are somewhat getting a little dizzy from this. And as a result, when you have a complex scenario that's kind of getting it out of hand. What's really required in that case is more cerebral thought. You got to be able to step outside of that and see what's happening, and as a result, make some decisions based on that. If you step out and you realize that we're all in this car and we're just driving towards this cliff. And, there's a few people, this is David Suzuki's kind of quote. He said that it's almost like we're kind of driving off this cliff. And there's a few people that are trying to warn everybody and tell them what's going on, but they're locked in the trunk and no one's listening to them. And that's probably true. This is another feature of this kind of like a Darwinian masculine way of looking at things, in that the people that are loudest and brashest often get attention in the floor and are able to modify the people around them, whether they like it or not. But what we're doing is, when you have this complexity, what's happening right now is that people are reacting with the body. They're reacting with their emotions. They're reacting with their fears. They're reacting with like scarcity and existential threat. And as a result, they're responding in ways that are, again, not so surprising. It's kind of an overreaction of the body response, where we're required actually more cerebral. We actually need more thought. More so-called smart, intelligent people. We shouldn't be dissing them. We should be listening to them. But of course, they have problems too. And I'm going to get to that. I've kind of worked out this matrix that I've been thinking about the last couple of days. And the matrix is about two different kinds of intelligences. So you got your traditional, what we call intellectual, cerebral, rational, logical type intelligence. So let's figure a graph. Let's say it's going, you've got an intelligence scale on the bottom. And then you've got kind of a vertical line, which is, let's call it another kind of intelligence. Let's call it emotional intelligence. Let's call it empathy, what have you. And when you do that, you've kind of got this range. And I think, again, this is a framework. It's useful. I'm not saying that the world is split into 4 different kinds of people. I'm not, but it is, if you choose to split it into 4 different kinds of people. It is a useful analogy. It is useful for us to talk about this. It's, thinking about it in terms of, capital or patriarchy or will to power or like a body system. You can think of it in this way, that it's organized. So you've got an empathy scale, you've got an intelligence scale. Here's what I see happening. And maybe this might make sense to you, it might be useful. In this range, if you have somebody that's, let's say, high intelligent and high emotional intelligence, so you've got a lot of empathy and you've got a lot of intelligence, I'd like to say that most of my friends, hopefully, are in that range, and these are the kind of people that I'm attracted to be around, to be close with, to do things with, to work with, to make art with, to do business with. Ideally, you'd want somebody who's both intelligent, high on the scale of cerebral intellectual intelligence, but also emotional intelligence, empathy. So those are kind of like the right top right quadrant, which are my friends. And on the left top end of this quadrant, you've got people that score high on empathy, but unfortunately might not be scoring high on the other kinds of intelligence, critical thinking, rational, being able to step out and look at things in a more objective fashion, and being able to structurally analyze something and realize something that's from outside rather than from within. Those, I think, are what the alt-right are referring to as cucktards. These are people that are, emotionally empathetic. They care for people. They want the world to be a better place. Maybe they're very simplistic. Maybe they're not seeing some of the complexities in the world. Maybe they're not actually experiencing some of the things that people that score high on the intelligence quotient are. And I think a lot of these alt-right types are making fun of these people. They're calling them pussies. They're calling them weak. They're calling them, people that are going to lose. They're going to call them losers. So that's that quadrant. Now, there's another quadrant, and again, I've already started describing this. The people on the alt-right, and they're sometimes described as kind of the intellectual faction of the right. It's probably overstating a little bit, but I got to say it's probably more intellectual than most of the right-wing people have that we've seen. And I got to give you like a prime embodied example of that. I'm going to say like Vladimir Putin is probably somebody like that. He's kind of highly intelligent. So he's right on the right side of the horizontal intelligence part of the graph. So he's at the right side of that, but he's also at the bottom of the empathy scale. So seems to be kind of like low empathy, high intelligence. Again, you'll see it doesn't stop you from being successful. And in fact, I got to say, probably there's a lot of CEOs, there's a lot of mafia bosses, there's a lot of people in politics that are probably on this, and they use their intelligence to great effect. They're able to move along within the world, take power. But if you scratch the surface, you see that there's something that's probably not very likable there. And unless you are in the good graces of such a person, it's probably a fucking hell to live within that system. So, do unto others kind of a thing. Yeah, maybe you're one of those minions that's kissing Putin's ass or Erdogan's or Trump. These are dictators, but you don't really want the world to be like that, do you? And if you do, I'm going to tell you, if you're kind of a young guy in your 20s and you think, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's the way it should be. That's the way it's always been. You think like Hobbes, that, Thomas Hobbes, who said that the world, the state of nature is actually, nasty, Brutus, and short, that it's kind of, state of nature is war. And that's kind of the human condition. And that, if you take that into consideration, you totally understand humanity. I think that way. Now, let's go to the other quadrant, the bottom left of this quadrant. So you've got also people that are sometimes low intelligence and low empathy. And, I'm going to pick on this guy, probably for as long as he's in power. And, I'm going to punch up, for sure. Donald Trump. Prime example, low intelligence, low empathy. But then you think, hold on a second. How does this guy make it then? How does he even become president if he's lacking all of these qualities? Well, if you happen to be low intelligence and low empathy, it really helps to be born into a multimillionaire family and being given all these advantages. Let's face it, anybody else with that set of skills, that level of intelligence, that level of pettiness, no doubt, had he not been born into a world of privilege and money, he would have been a con man that would have been in and out of jail, probably forging checks and doing all kinds of weird, selling swampland in Florida. And he still does that, but because he's so rich and powerful, he's been able to get away with it. And this is what happens. People are looking at success and they mimic it. So they look at this guy and they think, oh, he must be really, he must know something, because look at him. He's living it. He's living the life. He's got everything he needs. He's got beautiful women around him. And this is another thing that the alt-right always seems to be. It's almost like if you can, you got to have like bona fides, bona fides. If you can show that you're a tough guy and that you've made it in the business world, they'll defer to you. And I say this. I've got a lot of ideas that are clearly, of the left, of the caring, of the empathetic. I'm for such things as universal income and, protecting the poor and healthcare and education, all that stuff. And someone might be, on the alt-right, might be tempted to say, oh, you're just because you're a pussy. You can't make it in the real world. It's because you don't know how to make money or take power. Again, bullshit. I happen to have been quite successful in this capitalist world. And, I've made millions. I don't work anymore. I don't have to. I get laid sometimes. I've had girlfriends. I have people that have, like to be around me. But a lot of these guys in their 20s and teenagers, probably more in my teen years, I happen to be like this. You look at the world and you think, oh, I think I'm great. Why doesn't the world see that I'm great? Why aren't these women dating me? And in that circumstance, you're thinking, why are these girls, not wanting to be my girlfriend? And you think, well, clearly there's something wrong with them because I'm so great. And this is what seems to be happening with these alt-right types who, come on, you're just not getting laid enough and you are blaming the women. And it's not really that surprising to see that rape culture is perpetuated within groups like that because they think they deserve everything. They think they're great. And if women aren't, clinging on to them, there's something wrong with them. But then they think, oh, wait a minute. I look at someone like Trump, who's not that good looking, but he's got power and money and he's got all these beautiful women hanging around. There's supermodels want to marry him. So they think that's something to imitate. And that's kind of a sad thing. But nonetheless, that seems to be one of the driving forces within it. So we've got this matrix. We've got this, high empathy, high intelligent people that I like to hang around with. We've got the high intelligence and low empathy people like Putin that I would really try to avoid. But I have friends that are high intelligent and low empathy, and that's okay. You can get along with people like that to a certain extent, as long as they're not being cruel and, the empathy is so low that it's like Trump, that he doesn't really give a shit about anybody about it except himself, and he's completely absorbed in this world of his own ego. Those are people I really have nothing in common with, and I really see no hope for that. I mean, these are kind of maybe what Clinton was talking about when she called them deplorables. I mean, not that I agree with her on a lot of things, but there is kind of a segment of the population being low empathy and low intelligence, almost like, I don't know what to do with them. Let me go on to some other group then. So the high empathy, low intelligence people, what the alt-right like to call cucktards, the thing is, they call all liberals that. So they're not really distinguishing between the high intelligent and the low intelligent left. So they call these people cucktards, right? And but let me tell you what they're thinking, and let me tell you how the left essentially. I'm going to give away the the playbook for the left, and if you happen to be one of these alt-right guys, you can use it to defeat them, right? Okay, so here it is. This is how the left sometimes sees the world, whether they admit to it or not, or maybe whether they even realize it or not. They're looking at a lot of people around them. And in some cases, you happen to be this alt-right guy, let's say, in middle America, and you're in your 20s, you think you're great, but nobody sees it, and you're not getting ahead in the world, you don't have a girlfriend, and everything seems to be kind of working against you, and you think, well, if only, the world was to be, more in line with my kind of a masculine way of thinking. I mean, they would see that I could take over these pussies, and I can be the tough guy. But here's what the left sees. When they look at someone like that, what they see is somebody punching themselves in their own face. They see somebody, so it's kind of like the left will go and say to you, dude, I can't help but notice that you're continually punching yourself in the face. And not only that, but you seem to be supporting, some politicians and worldviews that encourage you to keep punching yourself in the face and encouraging other people to keep punching themselves in the face. So someone of the left who happens to have high empathy and doesn't want to see people punching themselves in the face will try to, do something about it. They kind of feel like it's a duty to help, even if the person doesn't quite understand that they're actually punching themselves in the face, supporting policies and politicians that are contrary to their own, best interests. Then it's kind of like the left feels that it's kind of their duty to try and help them. So they step in, but they're often told to fuck off and called pussies and nerds, and they're not listened to. And it's kind of demoralizing. I have this friend I was in grad school with, and he was from a privileged family. I mean, he had like professors, journalists, that sort of thing, doctors, and he was very much of the leftist persuasion, and he was empathetic. He wanted the world to be a better place. So he would, he used to get involved in these unions, for example. And he told me the story where he went to Hamilton, where I grew up, and would be in union meetings and, with the steelworkers, and, taking his own time to try and help them, to give them information, to negotiate better, to be able to, to fight the power and to do good things for the working man. But what he found quite often was, at these meetings, people would be constantly saying things like, hey, who brought that fucking packy here? What's that fucking packing you're doing here? He happened to be of East Indian origin. So you got these guys kind of dissing and shitting all over this guy who's trying to help them. So it gets very demoralizing. And what happens is a lot of these people on the left that are trying to help the world, to help you in some cases, get demoralized, and they kind of drop out. And that's sad, because, when you drop out, what are you doing? You're kind of ceding the world to the Trumps and the Putins and the assholes, and Trump, the king of the assholes. Is what happens. And look what happens. We get a president of the most powerful country in the world, presidency handed to this guy. So, here's the thing. It seems like there's hope. I mean, there's hope for, and I'll tell you why I think there's hope. Because I used to be one of these guys in my teen years and in my 20s who saw the world in terms of power and performance, and thought, if you make it, you deserve it, and if you don't, you're a loser, that kind of an approach. But in my own particular case, I was able to grow and develop an empathy, an emotional intelligence. And as a result, it's been very good for me. It's been very good, I think, for the world as well. I mean, I'm being more helpful than I used to be. It's better to be engaged with people and putting a positive spin into the world is a useful thing. So here's what I'm thinking. If you happen to be one of these guys, in your 20s, who's kind of feeling the heat of the cultural changes and the complexity, and you're kind of being drawn in by this, I'm just going to tell you, I used to be one of these dudes. I grew out of it, and you probably will too. Assuming you don't, you join some weird idealistic cult and become a suicide bomber or something like that. You're probably going to grow out of this, and you're going to look back and think, fuck, that was a simplistic worldview. What the fuck was I doing? Let's hope you get there, but I'm going to give you a bit of a head start. Empathy can be grown. So if you happen to be one of these guys, that are kind of low empathy, but you happen to be high intelligence, you're kind of primed for this because you're smart enough to be able to gut to. I mean, I can talk to you. I can maybe convince you with words, and then you could see, even if you don't feel it, you can say, "Oh, I don't feel that, but I can see what your point is. I can see how that could be helpful. I can see how that could be good for me. I can see how that could be good for the world." So you think, what can I do to, learn emotional intelligence, to work on my empathy? That's possible. But it seems like if you happen to be both, like a Trump, low intelligence and low empathy, it seems like you don't have enough intelligence to be even convinced that you need to grow your empathy. So I'm sorry to say, I'm not going to deal with that group. My friends are on the top right of this quadrant. People that I'm talking to right now are in the bottom right of this quadrant, which are kind of like high intelligence but low empathy. The cucktards, as you call them, I like them too. If you had to choose between high intelligence and high empathy, honestly, I think I'd probably choose high empathy. They're much nicer to be around. But here's the thing. If you're already intelligent, you can grow your empathy. But if you're already empathetic, it's kind of hard to grow your intelligence, but it can be done, and you see it, and as you get older and as you get wiser, maybe you'll be able to move to the right top side of this quadrant slowly. Of course, most people are in the center of this. There's like a big circle in the center of this quadrant. Most people aren't extreme in any of these quadrants, but so here I am. I'm talking to you, people who are intelligent, but maybe low in empathy. Maybe you're a part of this alt-right movement. Maybe see the world in terms of domination and power and force. Let me tell you something. You don't realize it yet, but you're the pussy. You're actually quite weak. Somebody who constantly is drawn to this worldview is clearly insecure and weak. And that's so obvious to the others that have those qualities. Believe me. You don't see this yet, but please just take it into consideration. Think about it. Think about emotional intelligence. Think about empathy and see how that might be useful to you. And it's almost like a superpower. And here I am. I'm giving away the playbook, for the left. This is how we think about it. But I'm not afraid to do that because it's like, okay, I've given it to you. If you happen to take it in and do something, it's not really going to harm my worldview. In fact, it will probably help it. There's a small chance that, if a certain number of people are listening to this, some of them might be, at least convinced to think about it, at least convinced to look at it, and maybe slowly change. And what really helped me, in my case, to change, and what could help you is hang around more women, Not the kind that are drawn to power and bling and that shit, because they're kind of they've been taken by this hyper-masculine world of, Darwinism, and they're kind of playing this stupid old primitive game where, shiny things and power and domination are attractive to them. Fuck that. Find some women that are empathetic. Hang around with them, and you're going to find that you'll develop more of that. Be open to it. You understand that there's kind of a superpower that you're not tapping into. We have this human capacity for understanding others, to see inside of them, to feel for them, and as a result, make the decisions based on that rather than trying to supersede and dominate somebody. You realize that if you work with them, it actually works out better for everybody. Okay, here you are, punching yourself in the face, and here we are on the left trying to tell you, hey, dude, you're punching yourself in the face. You probably should stop that. It'll be good for you. And then you might say something like, and this is kind of metaphorically the response that you hear, and not so much in words, but in their actions. And people will say something like, you know what? I'm good. I kind of got used to this face punching. It's become kind of my thing, you know. It's pretty easy. I know what I'm going to be doing tomorrow and the next day. I'm going to be punching myself in the face, so that, you know, that makes things a lot easier for me. And you know what else? I've been watching these these TV shows and commercials, and you know, if you work really hard, you can get like a gold-plated glove to punch yourself in the face with. And if you work really hard, and if you're really lucky, you could even get a diamond-encrusted gold glove to punch yourself in the face with. Yeah, I don't think that's going to work out for you in the end. Better to stop punching yourself in the face. What do I do in that case? I mean, is it okay in that case to lie to them? I mean, to maybe furnish them another reason why it's bad to punch yourself in the face. Maybe not for the reasons that are actually the case, but maybe you furnish them with some other explanation that for whatever reason is more compelling and persuasive to them. Maybe it's like religious type things. I don't know. Is it propaganda? What am I doing? Am I advocating propaganda? I don't think so. The notion of propaganda, I think, started with this idea of propagating the truth. But it has come on to take this notion that there's a lie involved, and there's part of me is very much against this notion of lying, even if it's for the good. I mean, it's kind of like the notion is, well, I had a gun to my head, I had to lie, and yeah, I'm going to say, if you have a gun to your head, sometimes you got to lie to get out of there, and as long as you're not oppressing and doing horrible things to other people. Yeah, it's probably a good thing to lie sometimes. But the thing is, quite often the gun is not to your head. I mean, a lot of people will say that, but sometimes the gun's not even in the same room. Sometimes it's a mile down the street and people think, well, I had to lie. You know what? You probably don't have to. You could probably go a long way down that path before you have to resort to such a thing, where you have to deceive somebody. So I'm left to think, well, how do we do this then? I mean, you try to tell what you consider to be, a very good analogical metaphor of what's going on in the world, and they don't buy it. You don't really want to lie to people to convince them to do things that are even in their own best interest, because it's something about that rubs the leftists the wrong way, most of them. Some of them don't seem to mind about lying, as long as they think it's a means to a good end. They can justify that. So it kind of makes me think maybe we should be kind of propagating memes. Like let's say we come up with this phrase that says something like face punch bad, handshake good. And we kind of spread that around, and we encourage people to write songs about face punch bad, handshake good. And, and we're not lying. It's actually a bad thing to punch yourself in the face or others. It's actually a good thing to shake their hand and cooperate. And then what's going to happen? So we have all these songs, we have TV shows, and then let's say you're kind of this person that's been sucked in by this worldview that I was describing. You might think, oh, wait, what did that guy say? He said, face punch bad, handshake good. What? I think I'll try that. I mean, at least some of them will try that. Some of them will actually, be influenced by it, and maybe it'll help. So let's spread some good memes around. Seems like the best thing we can do. And maybe we should have a meme jam. I think this was kind of discussed in one of our episodes, and it's not a bad idea. We should maybe do that soon. So there you are. Kind of a rant, went a little longer than I expected. And next Friday, we'll have another episode of Turtles All the Way Down with a guest and a conversation. Talk soon.